founder of Creative Edge Travel, and today I want to talk about a topic that's really important to me and should be becoming increasingly important to you, and that is responsible tourism. So the idea of sustainable tourism and having a positive impact, thinking more about your actions and the impact of them when you travel. So offsetting your carbon footprint is the number one thing, and I will link to a place where you can do that in the description here. But today I want to talk more about things that you can do when you are actually traveling to be a more responsible and conscientious traveler. So there are 10 tips I'm going to go through. The first one is limit the litter. So one thing I always do is I try to pack a few trash bags with me anywhere I go. Not only is it great for when I go on a hike and want to sit down without getting wet if it's rained recently or something like that, but it's great to take with you to the beach or, as I said, on a hike so that you can pick up trash as you go, and that's such a great way to be a great example for other tourists and be a good representation of tourists to locals to show that they're not all bad. So making sure you pick up your litter and leave a place more beautiful than you found it. The second tip is to choose lesser known destinations. Of course, one problem with so many people traveling today more than ever, over-tourism has really started to take a toll. I mean, it has been taking a huge toll on certain cities, especially Venice, for example, to the point that locals have to move out. They can't afford to live there anymore. The everyday shops where they would used to get their groceries or pay their bills or go to the post office, they turn into tourist shops to accommodate that market, and they just literally can't sustain their everyday normal life as they used to, and they leave. And it's so sad, and it's sad for everybody, because if there aren't locals there, then it becomes a Disney-like version of itself, and it just doesn't make sense. So we want to be conscious for our own good, if not for the locals, about how we're traveling. So choosing lesser-known destinations takes the stress off of those main cities that are already inundated with so many tourists and shops that are catering to the tourists. And it also spreads the economic benefit to other areas of the country. Another tip is to travel in the off-season. So similar concept, you'll be lessening the strain by going in the winter or the late fall instead of the summer. Another thing is to eat local and in season, and Italy is already really good about this. They really, they pride themselves on living in balance with nature and the natural bounty in the seasons, and they really get into celebrating, you know, the season of the chestnut, or I know when I'm in Puglia and the cherries become in season, people go crazy for them, whereas here in the US we can get cherries all year, and so it's not such a big deal. And I just thought that was amazing when I saw people just completely light up tasting their first cherry for the year. And I think that's a really that's kind of an experience that we're missing, right? Is not being able to have something certain times of year. You really appreciate it when you do. So anyway, trying to eat in season and local. In Italy, that's pretty easy to do, but tourist restaurants might not be doing that as much. So doing a little research to make sure you're eating in a really local and authentic place. Respect ceremonies and traditions. And this one is really easy to overlook. For example, if there is a church that currently they're having, oh my gosh, you can tell I don't go to church. What is it called when church is in session? If people are in the church, it's not the best time to go in because you'll be disturbing their ceremony and their traditions, and you know, having tourists walking up and down the aisles taking photos is really disturbing and disrespectful. But a lot of tourists will do it anyway because they're like, well, this is my only opportunity to get to go here, so I'm going to go in. So if you do go in, just don't take photos. Stand quietly in the back. Look around without making too much of disturbance. And also for ceremonies and traditions such as the Festival of the Patron Saint and things like that, where they're doing parades and carrying important religious statues, It's good to remind yourself that those are sacred traditions that have been done for ages, and it's not just a tourist show, you know? So have some respect. Try to learn about the meaning. Ask people what the story is and how it's changed throughout the years. It's a great opportunity to get a deeper perspective as well. The sixth tip is ask. So you want to ask, is this restaurant, hotel, or shop, is it locally owned? Are they hiring locals to support it? And it's usually pretty easy to spot a company based on whether they're based on making a profit or based on passion and community, by asking what their backstory is, like how it got started. You'll learn a lot about, you know, the history of the family, the great-great-grandfather that started it back in whatever, and as opposed to, you know, them just kind of being clueless and not knowing what the story is, then that might be a sign that it's maybe a foreign-owned company. And there are a lot of foreign-owned companies selling things to tourists and travelers that you might not even realize. So your dollars are not always staying in the place that you're visiting. And that's important because they're the ones that are you know, putting in the infrastructure and dealing with the positive and negative effects of tourism. The seventh tip is choose the right tour. So ask yourself, is this tour operator implementing sustainable tourism practices? Do their values uphold the culture and the community? Are they integrating locals' voices and hiring locals whenever possible? And are they adding strain to the cities that are already inundated with tourists? So at Creative Edge Travel, this is a huge priority for us to feature lesser known areas, and even when we are in known areas, including the voices of locals, so people that have actually grown up there and hearing the history from those who have lived it, instead of, you know, so often these groups of noni or local Italians will be sitting on the bench watching all the tourists go by their village with a guide that's not even from there, and nobody ever stops to ask them what their experience was and how they've seen their town change. So we really try to include their voices, and it doesn't make sense for an American girl to tell you about a certain place. So I always try to hire local guides to include them and give you their perspective. So I think that's really important when you're choosing a tour. Another sort of environmental tip is to bring a reusable bottle. You can go through 5-6 plus plastic water bottles a day when you're traveling, and if you multiply that by the millions of people that are traveling, that's a lot of waste. And one thing that's great about Italy is they have a lot of communal fountains that you can just fill your water bottle with. Fresh drinking water. So if you bring a reusable water bottle, you're going to be saving a lot of plastic from the landfills and a lot of money from having to buy water, and also get to kind of participate in the history of, you think about, I mean, most of these fountains have been there for a long, long time. So it's really cool to continue that tradition of getting your water from the community fountain. Number 9 is to pay attention to quality markings on local products. So foreign companies often will come in, find out what the local famous product there is, and create a copy of it that's not authentic and sell it to tourists for a cheaper price. The most classic example is Murano glass in Venice, and they actually have now created a stamp or sticker that is a recognized official proof of it being genuine Murano glass. So if you want to buy a typical product like ceramics or leather, do a little bit of research or go to the tourism board and ask the tourism office and ask them what you should look for to know that you're getting a genuine product and that your money is going to support the locals and the artists that made it. And even better than buying from a local shop is to go to the artist and buy it from them directly. And at Creative Edge, we're always happy to create experiences for you where you can actually go on a walk and get to stop by several different artisan shops and workshops and see how they make their products and learn about their stories. So it's a beautiful way to blend everything together. And then the last tip is to stay with locals if you can. So an agriturismo is a farm that's been adapted to also accommodate visitors. Be careful though, because there are a lot of agriturismi that they call themselves an agriturismo, but the only thing they actually make is jam, which to me doesn't really count. So look for one that has olive oil, wine, and has farm animals, and that's going to be your most immersive and special experience. And that's just a way to make sure that your money is going directly to locals, and a way for you to get an inside look at the culture and eat homemade food that most of the time has come from the surrounding few miles and hasn't traveled very far and is very fresh and organic. So yeah, just to recap the tips here, you've got limit the litter, choose lesser known destinations, travel in the off season, eat local and in season, respect ceremonies and traditions, ask questions to find out the backstory of the place you're visiting to determine if your money is going to people that you want it to be going to. Choose the right tour, bring a reusable water bottle, pay attention to quality markings on local products, and stay with locals. So I hope this was a really helpful video, and I hope it's going to help you be a little bit more mindful when you travel. It just takes a little more time and research, not really that much. Once you understand what you should be looking for, it's so much easier, and it's really just flipping a little switch to sort of change your approach to travel. And as you can see, most of these tips are actually ways to also increase the value of your experience. So you're going to get closer to the culture, and you're going to have more opportunities with locals. So this is a win-win for everybody, and I hope that you'll take it to heart. And I'd love to hear your stories if you discover something special by following these tips. Thank you so much, and head to creativeedgetravel.com if you want to see what else we've got cooking up. Ciao!